So good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm here to talk about the FTAs, so free trade agreements. This is something that, if you're looking to export goods overseas, this is something that I think, that you might want to start thinking about whether you could benefit under. So, without further ado, I'll just dive into it. Let's just dive into the basics. So what is an FTA? It stands for Free Trade Agreement, of course. So an FTA is actually a legally binding agreement between two or more countries to reduce or eliminate barriers to trade and to facilitate cross-border movement of goods and services between the two countries. So an FTA is essentially is actually a legal agreement. You can think of it like a legal contract signed between two countries, and it's sort of an FTA is sort of an agreement to between two countries to say, hey, we're going to treat each other a little bit better than we treat other people. So you can think of it like that. Once you start looking into FTAs, you would see that because it's a legal agreement, it can be a little bit difficult to read. There are a lot of chapters that covers everything from the trade in goods, trade in services, intellectual property rights, government procurement, etc., etc. So today's webinar is really focused on the trade in goods. So we're looking to see if we can help everyone reduce some duty costs out there in the world. So FTAs are usually bilateral. So bilateral in the sense that there are two countries, and we give, I offer you something and you offer me something. So that's a two-way arrangement. There are also regional agreements, so there are more than two countries. There are also less known. There are some unilateral agreements where it's just one-sided. So one country will say, I offer you some benefits if you export into my country, but you do not have to do the same for me. So there are a lot of FTAs out there. There are hundreds of FTAs out there. So you would have to look at them to see whether they offer any kind of savings for you. So we're diving straight into the trade in goods chapter in an FTA. So usually that's the meaty part. That's the part that usually people are interested and look into. So the objective of the trade in goods in the FTA is to secure duty-free treatment as much as possible between two countries. So I think you might have heard in the news, like this agreement, that agreement, how many rounds of negotiations it goes through between countries. Just to set the background a little bit, so you can think of it, countries will come together and then they negotiate, and then they say, okay, a typical negotiation is a little bit like going to buy fish at the market. So you would go like country A will say, if you give me duty-free access for strawberries, I'm willing to give you duty-free access for bananas, for example. So that's how it's probably a little bit more sophisticated than that, but that's the idea. It's really a negotiation process. So at the end of it, they would come to a landing and say, some products may be excluded from tariff concessions. Some products will be, upon entry into force, you get immediately, the duties are removed. Sometimes you would get a tariff reduction, so the products would, the tariff of a product would reduce, maybe over 10 years in equal portions, for example. So then you'd have to do some calculations, say each year it will reduce by this much. So just a note that FTAs do not cover the elimination of any kind of internal taxes. So it only touches customs duties, and it does not affect any VAT, or we call GST, or Malaysia they call it sales tax, or any kind of excise duties, luxury taxes. All these are all what we consider internal taxes that a country levies on companies, and therefore, FTAs do not touch them. Okay, so then, let's just go straight into how to unlock these potential savings, right? In my mind, there are 4 big steps, and I will go through them each step by step to see, and maybe, you can walk through together with me on, the thinking behind it. So the first step, I feel, is really to understand your trade flow. When I say trade flow, where are your goods originating in? And when I say originating, you can usually think about it as where are your manufacturing sites? Where in the world do you produce your products? And where do you export these products to? So I'm not saying, where your headquarter company is. What I'm saying is where do you produce your goods and where do you ship them to? So I have here the world map. The countries colored in red, you can see, are the ones that, Singapore currently has an FTA with. Is certainly not the whole world yet. There are large spaces that are still grey, but it's not too bad lah. Not too bad for a small country like us. I have here a full listing of all Singapore's bilateral agreements that we have already signed. Some of them negotiations have been launched. I will pause here for a second for you to kind of read through the list, and maybe you can think about, which are the agreements that potentially you could benefit from. Okay, and then here are the regional FTAs. So regional, as in there are more than 2 countries. So a lot of them you would notice are, the ones Singapore signed as part of ASEAN. So the ones that we negotiated as part of ASEAN. But there are also other ones like the CPTPP has been a hot one. So that one entered into effect, I think, sometime last year or the year before. This is the one that the US famously stepped out of and they never came back again. But there are still 11 countries in it, so it's actually quite a useful agreement. And some other ones. So I'll pause here for you to have a look also. So I think you might have noticed, or maybe you haven't, that there are some countries where Singapore seems to have more than one agreement with. So for example, in the bilateral ones, we have a China-Singapore FTA. And through ASEAN, we also have the ASEAN-China Free Trade Area. So in this case, where there are multiple FTAs for your particular trade flow, then this gives us some opportunity to do a little bit of what I like to call FTA shopping. So you pick and choose lah. So you can see which FTAs has better rules for you or offers better benefits or deeper benefits for you, and you can choose to use that FTA. So there is more sense to why we are signing agreements, multiple agreements rather than just have one. Yeah. So once you find that hey, between my 2 countries, Singapore and let's say China, hey, I have an FTA. Actually, I have 2 FTAs. Then the next thing you do is you make sure that are there actually any benefits offered under the FTA? Remember earlier I said that, if when they negotiate, there's a possibility that, some products, because they're very sensitive to their local market, so some countries might say, no, we have a local industry to protect, and say, bananas, we grow bananas in our country, and, we cannot have cheap bananas from, your country coming in to disrupt our local industry. So then these kind of products may be excluded. So it's very important to go and look into your products, product by product, to see what kind of benefits are actually there. So I actually have here a tariff reduction schedule. I just pulled a random one. This is the ASEAN-China FTA. Some random products, 83. I think that is some furniture or fittings. And And you can see that in year 2015, the rates actually got reduced to 0, and it remained there ever since. So it's once, usually FTAs would have clauses that say that once the rates have been reduced, they will not go up anymore. So remember again that an FTA is legally binding contract between two countries. So there is no such thing as we reduced it and then tomorrow I want to raise it again. So it's subject to both countries to renegotiate if they feel the original terms were not great. So I think you might have heard in the news back then, the US was complaining about the NAFTA agreement, the North America Free Trade Agreement, that they were getting a bad deal out of it. So that's what happened then, and they renegotiated, and then they have the new the new agreement between Mexico, Canada, and the US. So that's what happened there. So once you say, hey, there is an FTA, check, I get some benefits. Then we're talking. Then we look into, okay, do my products qualify? Okay, so to qualify for products, for free trade agreement benefits, you would need to meet the rules of origin. So the thing, if any of you out there are asking, okay, I've got this product shipped through Singapore, and there's an FTA between Singapore and, let's say, China, can I use the free trade agreement? I can tell you right now, cannot, because shipping through a country doesn't confer any origin. So but how can the final destination country know, right? They can see that, okay, your shipment is from Singapore, so to avoid this, there is every FTA has in place its own rules of origin that says only if you meet this rule, then your product will qualify as originating in that country, and then you would be able to issue the documentary proof to say origins in Singapore, for example. So the thing to note is that every FTA has its own set of rules of origin. So this is unfortunately the painful part of trying to qualify for FTAs, is that for every FTA that you're thinking of using, you need to go through the rules again, review it for your products, and see whether your products qualify. So it is perfectly possible that your product could qualify under one agreement and it may not qualify under a different agreement. Hence, like I said, there was some room to do some FTA shopping. So you can see which rules would fit better for you. So the rules of origin can be quite complex. Rules of origin can be general, or they can be product specific. So it really depends on the FTA. So for example, the ASEAN-India FTA, so if you're looking to export to India, the ASEAN-India FTA has a general rule that just says, all products, as long as it meets this particular rule, you would qualify. Whereas, some other products have rules. A lot of the EU agreements, for example, has rules that are product specific. So they actually go down product by product, each HS code line, and say, this is the specific rule that this product must meet before it can be considered originating. So unfortunately, that is really the painful point here. But so I'm going to just touch through some of the general rules that you would see in almost every FTA. So a product is usually either can be originating if it's either wholly obtained or if it has gone through substantial transformation. So wholly obtained really just means usually I will go through that, but Yeah, let me just go through that, I think. Yeah. So rules of origin, wholly obtained. So wholly obtained is a very simple rule to me. Usually it's items that are naturally occurring in the country. So it's usually things like your plants, your animals, so plants that are grown in the country, animals that are reared in the country, and minerals, for example, that you dig up in the ground, or fish that you fish up in our territorial waters. So it's things that you find um, like naturally occurring in the country. So that's wholly obtained. A fun fact, so many years ago, I heard from Singapore Customs, or was it the Ministry of Trade, that said that um, there are only two kinds of products that are, or that's many years ago, probably now there's more, two kinds of products that are qualifying under wholly obtained for exports from Singapore. Can anyone guess? It's actually orchids and ornamental fish, oddly enough. I'm sure now, we have this bigger push for agriculture and everything. Maybe there might be more that we are qualifying under wholly obtained and exporting out from Singapore. So that's wholly obtained. And then some FTAs have this concept of wholly produced. So wholly produced products are just products that completely use items that were originating in the country. So this one we would see in some of the agreements. For example, some of the Japan agreements would have this concept of wholly produced. But I think most of our companies here, most of our products are not, fruits or plants or animals, are not naturally occurring things. That could be, if it is, then it's easy for you. But if not, then we have to go and demonstrate that our product has gone through substantial transformation. So these are the items that we manufacture, that we produce further in the country. So these ones, there are different rules. One rule is the change in tariff classification. So just to I hope everyone knows, but just to highlight what is tariff classification. So every product in this world, when you clear for when you do the customs clearance, you will need to declare a tariff classification, a product classification, customs classification, HS code classification, whatever you call it. They're all the same thing. So this is harmonized with most countries in the world at the 6-digit level. So the first 6 digit is usually always the same. And then beyond that, each country comes up with their own digits. So the first 2 digits we typically call the chapter level. The first 4 digits we would call the heading level. And then the full 6 digits we would call the subheading level. Beyond that, I normally call it just the national level, national code. But it really depends, yeah. So I have here an example of a change in tariff classification. So this is a US-Singapore FTA. I pulled out the rule for refined palm oil. So this is what I'm trying to export from Singapore, right, to the US. I'm trying to export refined palm oil, which is classified in 1511.90. And then you can see that, okay, I import from Malaysia palm nuts. So this is my first example. I import the palm nuts and I further process it and I make it into refined palm oil. So you can see my raw material is the palm nuts, and it's classified in a different first 2 digits. So that's a different chapter from my refined palm oil. So therefore, I meet the rule which says that I need to change to 1511 from any other chapter. If, in my second example, same thing, I'm trying to export refined palm oil, but I import crude palm oil from Malaysia to further process. So all I do is the refining process here in Singapore. So you can see that I didn't change the code at the chapter level. So it's still 1511 become 1511. So in this case, clearly I have not done enough to I haven't done substantial transformation to my product. So the refining process is not sufficient. I would actually need to do more. So you can see the concept here. The more processes that you do in Singapore, then the more likely you are able to qualify for the FTA. So this just goes under the thinking that we're trying to benefit Singapore and not really trying to benefit Malaysia under the Singapore or US FTA, right? So we want to pull processes into Singapore. So that's one. Another one, this one you would run into very often. This is the regional content rule or local content rule, or some people call it the value added rule. So this one is just the value add required in the country of manufacture to qualify as originating. So usually the FTAs would specify the minimum percentage required. So in a lot of the ASEAN agreements, the basic rule is 40%, except the ASEAN India agreement, which requires a 35% value added content. So how to calculate it is basically all the local materials. So it's the cost of any locally bought materials, your direct labor costs, your overheads in Singapore, and then you can also top it up with the profit that you earn in Singapore over the product value. So usually it's the FOB value, and multiply that by 100 to get the percentage, and basically to see whether you would meet the minimum percentage required. So I have here another example of regional value content. So this is ACFTA, which I mentioned. For ASEAN agreements, a lot of them, the basic rule is 40% RVC. So you can see here, so I have capacitors, transistors that I buy in Singapore. And then I have some materials that I buy from non-Singapore countries. So it doesn't matter where, but outside of Singapore. So I import them. And then I have some labor heads, overheads, and some profit, which amounts up to the $1. And then I total it all up, and that's my FOB value, which is $10. So you can see that my local content is basically the bits that I source in Singapore, plus my value, plus my overheads, labor, profit, and then over the total value of the product, and I get 35%. So which you can see, this is not sufficient to meet the rules of origin. So what can we do? So here, what if I can say, hey, I found a supplier in Singapore that can make me some tin plating. So if I bring more so I have more local value add here. Okay, now my $2 suddenly add up to become local content. And then you can see now when I redo the math, I am now at 55%, and that is sufficient to push me over the 40% required. So in this case, I would be able to claim under the ASEAN-China Free Trade Agreement that my product meets the rule of origin, and therefore I can qualify for reduced duty when I import into China. Okay. I have here some other rules of origin key concepts that I feel is crucial to know. So accumulation. This one is just because we're in Singapore, this one I feel is very important. So accumulation allows originating products of a FTA partner country to be treated as local content, even if as if they were locally produced. So this one it is really an easy and effective way to increase the local content, the calculation of the local content that we have. Yeah, so once the product from the FTA partner country is originating, we can consider it as 100% local originating. So to do that, we would need to prove that that product was originating in the partner country. So then we also need to have, the relevant documentation proof to say origin in this FTA partner country. So just now, remember our example that we didn't meet the rule of origin, right? Where we fell short a little bit at 35%. But what happens here, my templating actually comes from Malaysia. Yeah, so I put in just now I said non-Singapore, now I've put in USA, Malaysia. Okay, and then we're trying to export it to China. Suddenly, actually the templating, it comes from Malaysia. So then I can, Malaysia is a member country of ASEAN. So it's part of the ASEAN-China Free Trade Agreement member countries. So therefore, I can actually accumulate the $2 that I incurred buying the materials from Malaysia as if it were local content. So now the sums work out to be the same, so I add it in, and then now I meet the rule of origin with 55%. Yeah, so that's accumulation in a nutshell. Where it's bilateral agreement, it's harder to use. So for example, if it's, let's say we're just talking about Singapore India agreement, for example. So if we are manufacturing from Singapore, export to India, but if we have any materials that come from India, we can add that in as if it were locally made in Singapore. So bilateral is a little bit harder because you're importing it and then you manufacture and re-export it back to the same country. It happens, but we see it less. Where I really see it being very important is, the ASEAN agreements. Then all your ASEAN materials can actually be accumulated as if they were all made in Singapore. So that's regional value content accumulation. The other thing is minimum processing. Okay, this one is very important because I often hear companies say, all I'm doing in Singapore is I'm doing some repacking or some simple kitting process. I put two products together in a box and then I ship it out. Is that okay? But those two products come from, let's say, USA. Okay, so I do some minimal processing, but is that enough? So every FTA would usually define a list of processes where, if that is all that you do in the country, in the last country, even if you meet, the 40%, even if you meet the change in tariff rule, if that is all that you're doing in the country, it is not sufficient to confer origin. So these processes are usually very simple processes. So it's things like putting a label on the products, or just simple storage or preservation of products, break bulking, very simple assembly, doesn't require any machinery or tools, that kind. Usually these are considered minimal and doesn't confer you any origin. So likely your products would retain its original country as its origin. So this one is for you to think about, if your processes are too small, is there any possibility to increase and scale up the processes in Singapore, for example? Okay. Some other concepts. Direct shipments. So usually between your country of manufacture and the country that you're trying to claim FTA benefits in, FTAs would usually say, the legal text would usually say that the goods must ship directly to the country. If it stops in a third country, then usually there would be some circumstances where it would be allowed. So if it was really for transportation reasons, the ship cannot go there directly, it needs to stop somewhere before load up again and then go somewhere else, then usually that's fine. Or usually if you have a true BL, that's usually fine. But if the goods stop in another country for a long while, storage there, sometimes the destination country will say, hey, your goods didn't meet the direct shipment rule. you can see like what the FTA is trying to, the thinking behind it is that it's trying to avoid, the situation that you do something hanky-panky in the third country, you swap it out for other products or anything like that. So that's the thinking behind it. So that's why they're asking for direct shipment. So there is a relaxation under the ASEAN Agreements. I think most of us will probably use the ASEAN Agreements more often. So there is a relaxation. So under the ASEAN Agreements, there is this concept of a back-to-back certificate of origin. If the third country that you're shipping through is actually a member country, so another ASEAN country, for example. So let's say I ship to Malaysia first before it goes out to China. For some reason, I have a consolidation hub or whatever. Then in Malaysia, I can actually issue a second certificate of origin. It would still have all the same details, and it would say origin in Singapore. So it doesn't become origin in Malaysia. It would still say origin in Singapore. And then you would still be able to claim for tariff preference in your country of destination. So that's, but note that this one is really only for the ASEAN Agreements that you have this. The third one, I'm not sure if a lot of you guys would use this clause. So third country invoicing just says that if you not ship through, if you bill through a third company, so instead of the seller, the manufacturer invoice the buyer, there is, let's say, a HQ company that you sell to before you sell to the final buyer. Then but the goods ship direct. Then under some agreements, it's expressly allowed. So all the ASEAN agreements today allow third country invoicing or third party invoicing, some people would call it. For a lot of other agreements, it's silent. So it really, as in the FTA does not mention this clause. So it really depends on the final destination country if they would accept this kind of indirect invoicing. So that's something to take note of. So up to here, you should be able to determine, okay, hey, my products qualify. I've calculated by RVC, I meet the rule of origin, there are benefits to be claimed, and then what do you do? Okay, so then you need proof lah. You need documentary proof that your product's origin in the country. So to do that, you need to issue a certificate of origin. So in Singapore, it's not that complicated. You would need to submit application to Singapore Customs. So you need to submit the factory registration first, and then the customs may or may not come down to your facility to take a look, make sure that you're saying you're making these processes, these things are really happening. And then they would require you product by product, so products that you want to claim for tariff benefits, they require you to submit a manufacturer's cost statement, so detailed costing if you are using the value added rule, or if you're not, then if you're using a change in tariff rule, then we would need to have all the materials and the HS codes for all the materials. And then once that is approved, on every export, you can issue the certificate of origin. And your importer would just take the certificate and in their country to go claim for tariff benefits. Yeah, so that's, I have here, I'm trying to look at the time. I think we should be okay. Just some top questions, that I can see, some companies asking all the time, when they're thinking of utilizing FTAs, where to start? That's like the first question, how to start, what to do. So all of you guys here are listening to this webinar, so I think that's great. This is a great start if you haven't started. So like what I said, like where are the available FTAs? Sometimes I think companies get stuck at, where do I even find the legal text? the legal text has so many pages, which chapters do I need to read? So I think, these are things that needs to be worked through. Hopefully, this webinar gives you a bit of a start to think through, what are the issues, what are some of the key concepts. Do your products qualify? So you can see that, my gosh, the rules can vary between FTAs, can vary between products within an FTA. So actually it's very complex. And really, companies, once you step into it, you do a one-time study and you say, oh, okay, these products qualify, these products won't qualify. You really need to monitor this continuously. So it's just because what if you change formulation? You change one of your suppliers. Now let's say you were sourcing it locally, and then actually, your sourcing department say, hey, actually, we can source it from, let's say, this other country, but then it's not a member country, and suddenly you might drop below, the required 40%, for example, and then your products suddenly don't qualify. So it's constantly monitoring. And then getting approval, how to get approval. So what are the processes with customs? How to complete the manufacturer's cost statement. I think a lot of companies even get stuck there. How to define labor head and labor and overheads. How to, did I just say labor head? Labor and overheads. How to define that, and we need to define that down, allocate that down to one unit of your product. So some companies find that difficult. Are there supply chain related concerns? Do I need to can I ship directly, for example? So that was one of the considerations. Or I have a consolidation center, for example, in this country. All my goods must go there. If not, it wouldn't make sense for me from a supply chain perspective. Then what are the benefits? Is it enough for you to ship direct, for example? Okay, and then this one is very important, the defense. How to this is, I think, what companies are afraid of. What if we get it wrong? Like, this is so complicated. What happens if I get it wrong? If I get checked by customs? Then typically, if there is a process, so in the importing country, if they feel that documentation doesn't look right, or they don't feel your products qualify, or they're like, are you sure Singapore produces this? Don't think so. So what they can do is they will come back to the exporting country customs authority, and they will say, hey, we have some doubts on the origin of this product. Can you help us verify? So usually then customs will come down, take a look, verify, and within a certain period of number of days, they need to actually report back to the importing country and say, okay, we've checked, all good, or we check and oops, sorry, they actually don't qualify. Yeah. So what happens if, what if really don't qualify? There's somewhere along the way, our sourcing changed and we didn't update customs, and suddenly we didn't qualify. Usually, in the importing country side, usually it might mean that they will deny the preferential treatment. If it was historical issue, they might even claw back, the tariffs that you owe them, because actually your products did not qualify all this while, and then you say you qualify, so you enjoyed this lowered tariff which you shouldn't have. In some countries, they may levy a penalty on top of that, but it really depends on what was the issue, and I guess which country and how aggressive they are. So up to here, I feel that there is a little bit of scaring, but I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to encourage all of you to use FTAs. So I put together some resources to help you get started. So the Singapore Customs website has a lot of information on the processes, how to submit factory registration, the template for manufacturer's cost statement, etc. The tariff, you can check the HS codes in Singapore. So remember, the first 6 digits are the same, mostly throughout the world. And then the Singapore FTA network has all the legal texts that Singapore is a member country of. So this is where, if you're asking me, where to check the legal text, this is where you will be able to find them. Okay, so you can download the legal text and read them at your leisure if you would like. I recommend to start with the Trade in Goods chapter, and then also the Rules of Origin. And if one more step is the operational certification procedures. I think these 3 chapters should typically be good enough to read through lah. If you feel that you cannot sleep at night, you can obviously read through the other chapters also. If you really cannot sleep, I would recommend you go and read the CPTPP agreement, as that one is over 1,000 pages long. But yeah, which I haven't gone through myself. I do sleep well at night, so that's fine. The Tariff Finder is something that is available on the ESG site, the Enterprise Singapore site. I'm not here, they did not pay me to advertise for them, but I actually played with it myself, and it's actually quite a nice place to start some basic research on tariff rates in different countries. What are the FTA rates, for example? So this one is actually quite a good tool that is available for all companies in Singapore to use. It's free of charge, so make use of it. And then also I wanted to talk about Enterprise Singapore actually has they're trying to encourage companies in Singapore, especially SMEs, to go and utilize FTAs. The company spends a lot of resources. Singapore spends a lot of resources negotiating FTAs. It's a long drawn process, and we need to send teams, and they meet and they negotiate. So they want the take-up rate to be higher. More people need to apply and make use of it. It's already there, might as well use. So Enterprise Singapore is all about trying to encourage this. There is actually a grant that can help with this. I wanted to talk about this. So it's part of the Market Readiness Assistance Grant. And as part of it, this year, actually, the first budget that happened, not the subsequent ones, the FTA consultancy was added as a supportable activity. So you can actually get help, and ESG will be able to support the help that you will get. So actually it's pretty good lah. So you get 70% off all consultancy fees, capped at 30K per company per market that you're looking to export to. So actually it's quite decent. So that's about it. So I hope that this session is inspires you to start off and see where you could, because these are instant benefits, so it's already there. The countries have already agreed to provide these benefits. So I would say if just take the first step and try and see where you could get the benefits at. So hopefully this session was helpful. I have my details here that you guys will get as the slides later also. So if there are further questions, we will take later also, but if there are further questions, you can also contact me. So I think that's about it for my session. So Tiffany, I will hand back to you if you're here.
Okay, Melissa, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, before you leave, okay, I do have someone, Jacinta, who would like to ask you to repeat what are the 3 chapters to read that you have said previously.
Okay. So every FTA is built differently lah, but I would say usually the Trade in Goods chapter would mention what are the tariff benefits like, and then the Rules of Origin chapter would mention all those rules that I was talking about, and then the Operational Certification Procedures chapter, the OCP normally we call it, usually talks about the documentary requirements. So things like how to issue the certificate of origin and things like that. So these are the 3 chapters. And sorry, there's one more. Usually the annex would provide you, so at the back, there will be the annex that will provide you the full tariff reduction schedule. So that's where you would check product by product, what is the reduction like.
Okay, can share. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks so much. I hope that answers Jacinta's questions before we end. Okay, for the rest of the participants who would like to ask any questions with regards to Melissa, please feel free to post in the Q&A icon inside, at the Q&A button, and we will have the panel discussion later on to discuss further in details on addressing your question. Now, next up, I'd like to introduce our next speaker for today, Mr. Hu Wee Chet, Director of Products in GeTs Asia. He'll be sharing more about how technology such as machine learning enables traders to access more comprehensive information about preferential duties and trade formalities. So, Wei-Chet, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for coming to this webinar. My name is Wei-Chet. I'm the Product Director in GeTs, taking care of one of these intelligent tool that doing the HS recommendation and also advising, giving you the access to the list of the FTAs that mentioned earlier. Just now, I think you heard about the topic of there's a lengthy list of the FTAs available. There will be quite a detailed kind of write-up within that whole FTA, because it is a legal binding document. So I find that's very interesting, because exactly that's how our tool try to help to simplify the whole search. Let me share my screen. Hope you can see that. I think I'll just do a quick introduction of the company, just in case those that do not know who is GeTs. GeTs is a fully owned subsidiary of Crimson Logic. I think the slide will be circulated. I'm not going into the details so that we can save a bit of time. I think I'm talking about more on the whole Calista portal. And this portal actually, this platform has a lot of offerings, and in the past of the webinars that we participate, and I think last month GeTs also joined one of the webinar. The team actually did a lengthy sharing in terms of the capabilities, in terms of offering the services that helping logistics, compliance, and also financial. I think that video probably still available. Can go and check with Tiffany, where is the link. So this is the overview of the services that GeTs offer. I'm not going into the detail, because today basically I am going to cover a lot more on the customs requirements, which covering more on the searching, finding out what is the correct HS code to be used and what are the available FTAs. And yep, this is exactly the topic that I would want to cover today, that Calista Intelligent Advisory. This is how typically most of us do the search today. Google find out something and then lead us to maybe ESG, Tariff Finder, then maybe the ASEAN Tariff Finder. There's a lot of all this, and we need to read a lot. And because of all this information are too massive, and there are certain search that available today, right? They do not allow us to actually search by layman description. They wanted us to put in the HS product description exactly. If you can't find an exact match, you can't get the result. I think that's the challenge that we face. Second, if let's say there are certain tools, they limit you to search for the country pair or the trade flow that we talk about. They restrict you to search only between Singapore and somewhere else. But to us, I think to us, business-wise, maybe we need to search beyond that. So that's the limitation that potentially restrict your search. And if you need to search beyond that, where else can you get? Of course, today we are sharing with you this tool so that you know how technology or the way that we have acquired information and make it simplified for you to be able to do all this. The tool that Melissa mentioned, I think those are available and also free. This is one of the many tools as well. In GeTs, we offer this Calista Intelligent Advisory, CIA in short. It actually covers more than 180 countries. So for us, actually, the HS search or this HS classification, instead of asking you to put in the HS product description directly or HS code, we allow you to put in the layman description, the product description that you are more familiar with. And from that search, you can further drill down to get the FTA, and you can also refer to the import-export document list, as well as to check the import controls. Of course, the way you can consume, there are multiple ways. If you are the user that prefer to use UI, you can actually log into the portal, gain access, and then do the search. But if you are heavy user, volume high volume transactional, you can call our API. Next slide. Actually, this is the typical flow that earlier I tried to explain, that you do a search, you try to put in the product description that you are more familiar with. Unless you are really trained in trade, that you understand what is the product HS code to be used. Then next, if let's say you are doing the search, there are so many FTAs available. How do you do that search and finding which one is relevant and how many of them are relevant? If let's say you know your freight costs, you know all the accessorial charges components, is there a way for you to quickly calculate and find out how different it is between the multiple FTAs available for you to do your quick assessment? All this very difficult for you to contextualize. Instead, I'm going straight into the demo. All right, allow me to toggle to my demo screen. Okay, so I'll do a quick search. And to start off, probably I'll do this search. Let's say I'm trying to get something in from Malaysia into Singapore. That's how I want to do the search. And again, if let's say I'm not too sure about the product HS code, straight away I put in the product description. And this is how I can actually get the HS code that right in front of me. I can choose, I drew in directly and pull out this particular one that may be more relevant to me in my product that I want to bring into Singapore. Deriving the HS code is going through the whole AI and machine learning through the data that we have, matching against the database of HS, a huge database of all these list of chapters, heading and also subheading, and pulling out the available FTAs. Remember, this is the FTAs that, let's say I'm moving goods from Malaysia into Singapore. What are the available FTAs? And these are the list of FTAs that actually I can utilize. Of course, we will ask, between these FTAs, which one is the better one? Which one will be more favorable to me in my case? If let's say I'm moving goods from Malaysia into Singapore, maybe I'll choose the Artiga. But assuming Artiga one day get expired, am I able to use the other one? I think based on the understanding, yes, you should be able to use because that is within the ASEAN one. So we allow the shopping earlier on that Melissa talked about, make available in front of you, easier for your whole search. Instead of you search through the FTAs, then try to decide which one is relevant. So we reverse that search, you go by the product, look for the available FTAs. Same product, assuming this is the same product, I try to go by another country. I try to bring from Malaysia, let's say into China. I like to use glove because it's quite an in-demand thing recently because of the pandemic. So assuming this is the product, if I bring into China, what will be the available FTAs that I can actually leverage on? Perhaps this is the only one that I can utilize. So this is how actually it makes the whole shopping journey, right? Unless you really like to shop a long time, like me, no choice, go with my wife, right? So no choice. But I don't like, I try to chop, go, come back. So this is the way that probably I'll try to get my duties information quickly so that I can make my planning. Retrieving certain key information for me to understand further. Instead of reading through, then decide. Now I select, I drill in deeper to read. Instead of reading so many, I read lesser. I still need to read for sure, but at least I read lesser. All this information that Melissa mentioned earlier are all available. The origin criteria stated here, all these are something that you need to read. Right now, this is how you should quickly digest the information and decide that, yes, I am qualified. I probably will move on to next step. So this is how the search makes simplified in terms of turning the product description, finding the right HS code, bringing you the list of the available FTAs. Okay. Last in my demo that I want to quickly share with you is that it is something that we have launched in our beta that I also want to call it out so that you understand how these FTAs, as well as calculating the landed cost, right? How can that be related? Maybe I'll just pull something out from, let's say, I think United States. Okay. Okay. Okay, this is the favorite one. Okay. So assuming I do not know the HS code, again, I'm going through the whole journey. I'm trying to bring in corn from US. So this should be, let's say this is the one. Maybe I'm picking up the sweet corn. Okay, so my whole goods I'm moving in with CIF. Pardon me with the number, I'll just simply put in any figure. So this could be C. Then I'm choosing my shipment date. Okay, so maybe all right. So assuming. So this is the default duty that I need to pay because of the current trade situation. And this is the percentage that I need to pay. But if let's say based on the more favorable, which is in the past can be enjoyed, but now no longer, but this is, this is how you should be able to see your total landed cost is actually affected by this taxes duty, hence your cost being increased. So this actually help you in terms of knowing what are the FTAs available, what are the impact in terms of the taxes duty, and finally affecting your total landed cost. Yeah, I hope I'm using the demo to walk you through how the search can be simplified, how the information make in front of you easier for you to digest instead of reading through the lengthy chapters, don't know how many thousand pages, then make a decision. I think what we are trying is to simplify the search, bring the information to you, make your decision easier. All right, I think I have finished my presentation. But before that, probably I'll show you a few more slides. So I've done the demo, and this is a quick video for you to take away. That this is a quick search that can lead you to getting the HS code, finding out the better preferential tariffs that you can utilize. And today we also offer 10 searches free if you sign up with us. So the sign up is very simple. Go scan the QR code, fill out the form. We'll issue you the ID and you can play with it. And this 10 searches is free. All right, I think, Melissa, I have ended my presentation. Really, this is the last slide that I have.
Okay, Ken, sure. Thanks, Richard. Thanks so much for your presentation. I hope the participants at least have an idea of another alternative way to go about to search for their, their HS codes and everything. Now, we have come to the Q&A session. Before we start off with the Q&A session, for those who would like to receive the presentation deck, do note that we'll be sending the edited version of it to the participants who have attended the webinar session today after the event. Okay. So without further ado, let us now welcome back our two speakers for the Q&A session. As usual, to the rest of the participants, if you have any questions for the speakers, feel free to submit them by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and type in your questions. Do note that as we have limited time for the Q&A sessions, we will not be able to answer all of the questions. And thus, we seek your kind understanding that if should your questions not be able to answer during the session, please contact PwC and GeTs Asia directly with their contact details featured on the screen, or email SCCCI and we will also forward your inquiries to them. Now, do note that we also understand that because FTA, these topic the questions may be a bit heavy. So if your questions is a bit too niche onto your particular products, or you need a story of the background to it, try emailing the speakers instead, and we will try to address you directly from down there. So can we have all the speakers back aboard, and we will start off with the Q&A session now. Now, I've seen quite a number of questions. I think many of them are just going to be directed to Melissa down there on answering. So maybe we'll start with the first question. I have with me Mike Lim, okay? And my question is this, okay, say my products consist of components OEM produced in 2 or 3 other countries and assembled in Singapore. how do I declare my product's country of origins? Now, Melissa, I understand that, each and every product, probably there's also forms that they need to fill and everything to go about. Maybe you can explain to the participants, how can they go about, especially when they have OEM of products in like 2 to 3 different countries.
Okay, this is a very good question. Okay, basically, right, what my question would then be, what country, what kind of origin we're looking for. Okay, so basically, if we're looking for preferential origin for FTA purposes, then you need to, how to determine origin really depends on the FTA that you're trying to use. So it really depends on how big your assembly production process is in Singapore also. So let's say you bring in 2 or 3, let's say Malaysia, bring in China, and then you assemble in Singapore. Would that process meet the rule of origin under that particular FTA? If it does, then we can declare preferential origin as made in Singapore. If it doesn't, then you may can only fall back onto non-preferential rules of origin. So you will not be able to benefit for FTA, but you might be able to say, okay, you might be able to still say made in Singapore, but basically for non-preferential purposes. So not sure if that answers your questions.
Okay, Ken, sure. Thanks, thanks, Melissa. I hope Mike, Melissa is able to answer your question on it. I think the next question that we'll go to is for Eric. Eric question I think is more for WeChat down there. His question is, if we ship the cargo to the country without FTA with us, but they ask for certificate of origin CO, what is the purpose of having the CO since no tax benefits? I think maybe we have to be clear. Maybe Melissa, you also can chip in a bit to explain the difference of certificate of origins with regards to these FTAs, and if let's say they were to send their products, do they need both FTAs and CO, or just FTA will do?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe Melissa. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'll take this question actually. Okay. So if your customer, let's say, is asking you for a CO, but you are sure there's no FTA, then maybe you can clarify what CO they need. So I mentioned for the earlier question also, there is preferential CO, so preferential certificate of origin, where we are claiming for a tariff benefit under a certain FTA. So your customer would take the CO and say originating in Singapore, and then we deserve a lower duty under this FTA. So that's a preferential CO. There is also non-preferential certificate of origin, and this is really depends. It is just a document, a certificate that says made in Singapore, but there is no FTA benefits at the end. Usually, it's for sensitive products. Usually, some kind of food products might require it, and or pharma products might require it. So depends on the country that you're importing in and the products that you are exporting. They may require you there may be a rule saying that products that come in, we require a CO, a non-preferential certificate of origin, or in Singapore we actually call it ordinary certificate origin, and that one has no FTA benefit. So you just to certify that it's made in Singapore. The rules of origin for that is actually easier to meet than FTA rules typically. So usually the threshold is much lower, and then most products, if you do some kind of processing here, you will be able to meet the non-preferential rules of origin. Another thing to note is that non-preferential rule of origin is actually not issued by Singapore Customs. So it's actually issued by all the chambers in Singapore. So that's the difference. So maybe I'm guessing that might be the purpose, that is they're asking for a non-preferential CO to certify that your products actually do come from Singapore, if there's no FTA benefit lah.
Yeah, if no FTA benefits, yes, I think
probably that's why. Yeah.
Tiffany, maybe you want to share about chambers,
Yeah,
non-preferential CO.
Yes, Singapore Chinese Chamber does
Yeah.
the Certificate of Origin Office. So for any of you all, if you want to apply for the Certificate of Origins, you can come to Singapore Chinese Chamber or just give us a call and we will guide you through on how to get your CO, paperwork done down there. Yes. So Richard, sorry, do you have any more to add on with it on your side down there?
On the CO part, no, I think, yep. No.
Quite done. Okay, can sure. We will proceed on to the next question. Okay, I think the next question is also for Melissa, more of the MRA grant. Now, Melissa, I understand that many of the participants are trying to kickstart their FTA journeys, everything, and a lot of them, as what we can see from the polling questions, they are just trying to do their own homework, to try to search for information and stuff. But I think it's very important, for a lot of the companies to have the correct, expertise to help them and guide them up. And for those who want to start off, I think how probably want to address a bit how to kickstart off and how to have this, MRA grant. So we have this participant by 4 Ways Engineering. They would like to know more about the MRA grant and how it applies to exporting of products to overseas market. So maybe over to you, Melissa.
Yeah, so the MRA grant has been existing for quite many years already lah. So actually it has a list of supportable activities. It's really to help companies internationalize. And I think this year what was interesting, at least for me very interesting, was that the budget this year they announced that FTA consultancy can be one of the supportable activities under the MRA grant. So this is really for you to go and if you really find it difficult, don't know where to start, don't know whether my products qualify, don't know where to look at, not sure what to do, you could go and seek outside help. So consultants out there that could help you, have a look at, let's say your trade profiles and say, whether your products qualify or don't qualify and help you through that process. And it could support could even be all the way up to helping you submit the application to customs. So that actually is a supportable activity under the ESG, the MRA grant. So it's something that you can you can go and seek help for. So typically, I think you can go and talk to any consultants and say, okay, I would like to start this. Here are my products. This is where I export to. This is where I manufacture. What do I need to do? And then the consultants might provide you, let's say, a fee code, and then after that is a claimable activity. So you can go and claim back the 70% of the fees from ESG. So this is something that if you're really don't know how to start, maybe it might be something that it's good for you to take up, because there's funding from the government. Yeah.
Okay, can sure. Thank you, Melissa. I hope the participants have more idea about how to go about for the MRA grants and everything. Of course, if you want to find out further in details, we'll be providing the speaker's contact details, and you can write to them directly to know how to go about down there. Now, I do have another question. Okay, is by Cyan. I think many of the Singapore firms in Singapore, they are mainly traders down there. So Cyan question is that for most SMEs are unable to manufacture in Singapore due to costs, as we all know it. We are only in trading. Is there any opportunity for us to take advantage of the FTAs? Okay, so I think over to you again, Melissa.
Yeah, this is a good question. So if your company is only doing trading, and let's say your customer says, we need a certificate of origin from you, if so that we can enjoy lower duties when we import, then probably you would have to work with your suppliers wherever they are in the world, to say, is it possible for you to provide the certificate of origin? So like I mentioned, it really has to come down to where you produce, so where you source if it's not your own factory, and where your destination market is. So of course, I guess if you, let's say I think there was another question that we are manufacturing in Malaysia, then you would need to look at, okay, what are the FTAs that Malaysia has with your destination countries. So if that is your own factory, then of course I think it's easier. You can do the work that yourself and try and qualify for the FTA and do the processes in Malaysia. So you apply for a CO saying made in Malaysia, basically. But if it's a third party, then you might have to work with your suppliers to see if they are able to provide you with that. So this really depends on how your whole flow looks like.
Okay, Kensha, thanks, Melissa. I think it's important to work with your suppliers and vendors to make sure where's your products coming from, and then see how you work things out with them down there. So I hope I hope Melissa has also answered your question on that. Okay, and we do have another question by Zhen Hua. Zhen Hua question is that, can we purchase a locally manufactured goods from another local company, bracket MCS, able to meet our VC value and apply MCS and CO under our company for exports? So I think, Melissa, that's back to you again. Yep.
Okay, let me just see the words. Okay, can we purchase a, okay. Yes. So if you purchase goods from, so let's say you're a Singapore company and you're purchasing from another local company, and what happens is typically the actual manufacturer should go through the entire process of factory registration, submitting the MCS, the manufacturer's cost statement, to customs. And then once they have that, they will receive the approval letter. So it says your product qualifies based on this rule, blah, 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 under this agreement. And then they would be able to, they need to provide you, so you're another local company, they need to provide you with a letter saying that essentially the same thing, or they can provide you that approval letter from customs saying our product qualifies. And you would be able to use their manufacturer's cost statement basically to issue the CO under your company. So that's possible.
Okay, Kensha, thanks, Melissa. I understand that the questions may be getting more and more complex a bit. So, Melissa, I also have another question by Eric. I think the question is going to be a bit complex, so I probably need to read further in details, of course. His question is that they are doing on trading. Is it allowable for transshipment? Means goods stop at Singapore and re-export to Indonesia. Specifically, origins are from China. Now, so is this CO from China and vessel from Singapore eligible for FTA benefits itself?
Okay. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the goods are coming from China and we have a certificate of origin issued from China. It's stopping in Singapore, transshipment only, and then it goes to final destination in Indonesia. Yes. Okay. So yes. So basically, again, when you think of where is your source country, that's China. Your final destination, that's Indonesia. So that's the key thing, right? And then what are the FTAs between it? So between China, Indonesia, there is the ASEAN-China Free Trade Agreement. And actually, Singapore happens to be a member country. So that's actually a nice thing. So I mentioned just now that usually you would need to directly export. But there is a relaxation that if it comes to a member country, you can issue a back-to-back CO in Singapore. So there are two cases. So if, let's say you're going under a true BL, stops in Singapore and it goes to Indonesia, then there is really no need to issue the back-to-back CO. But let's say it stops in Singapore for a while, you unload it and then put it in a warehouse for a while and then you re-export it out. And then in that case, you might want to reissue a certificate, a back-to-back certificate of origin. So it will still say origin from China, but issued by Singapore. And then you can use that second one to claim in Indonesia.
Okay, Kensha. I hope Melissa has answered every questions on it. Yes, okay, because we only left about 3 more minutes, so I'm going to only pick up the last 2 questions for it. I do have a participant that I've been asking beforehand for this event on e-commerce goods. Okay, now we know that because of COVID, everything has all went digital, and the e-commerce market has just boomed up everything. Now her question is that, are e-commerce goods taxable? And understand that currently maybe there's a certain limits to it, so maybe both Melissa and Richard would like to address on these e-commerce goods, digital goods that's going about. So over to Melissa and Richard.
Okay, I will just quickly comment. So I think there are 2 different things. So I saw this question also. So there are e-commerce goods and there are digital goods. So to me, it's 2 different things. So e-commerce goods are really things, let's say, we buy on the Taobao order, that kind, everyone does it nowadays, right? And it's physical goods that are coming in. So if they're physical goods that are coming in, then it's still caught by the customs rules. So it's actually goods that are coming in. In that case, there are in Singapore and in most countries there are some low value shipment rules where if it's below a certain threshold imported through parcel post, usually you don't have to. You won't be hit by any kind of import GST or duties. So that is available. That's for e-commerce. Of course, beyond the threshold, you would still need to properly import and pay the relevant duties and taxes. I think the question actually asked about digital goods, which to me is a whole different world. Digital goods are the things that we cannot see, right? It's the music that we download on Spotify, or like when we or Netflix that we watch on TV, and those whether these are, if that's taxable, I think not yet. They're not considered goods yet. I had this debate once before on whether it's a good or it's a service with my boss. But it is not yet considered a good. It doesn't require customs declaration when you download something. So it's not thought of it that way. Are they going to be putting in duties, considering them as goods next time? Maybe. There are some countries, so there is one that I know. So Indonesia has actually created Chapter 99 in the HS, providing for digital goods, and apparently you need to declare them if you are importing the goods. So that might be where the world is heading to, but it's not quite yet known now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Richard, do you have something to add on from there?
Yeah, just to add on, I think based on customs website, they stated quite, I wouldn't say very clear, but they mention it in a way that as long as it is being consumed in Singapore, right, then this is subject to the standard rated GST. So if you are the seller, I think you need to prepare for the standard rate. That's what they have written there. And then only when it is international service, then yes, probably you can get the 0 rated. So that part, I think, probably have to ring in customs to find out the detailed part. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Melissa. Okay, we have now come to the final question. I understand that the still participants are keying their question. So sorry, we'll try to address them maybe after the whole session via email. But I think the final question that we have, by Tony, which is the finale questions that we're going about for all the companies here who's trying to understand the whole FTA, how it works in Singapore, how do I go? Especially his question is like, since Singapore is a free trade port area, how does this whole FTA work in Singapore? How do I go about, should I do when my first shipment, should I be very gung-ho, start off with a big amount, or, should I maybe just start off small and test it out, so maybe how should we go about? Maybe we have Melissa to address it, and maybe for WeChat, maybe you can also talk about how, Get Services is going to help to speed up for all the companies, in terms of their FTA journey.
Okay, so this is a good question. Singapore is a free trade port, mostly. So who cares, right? Why need FTA, right? So it's true lah. On the importation end, there in Singapore there's only 4 products. I think it's been reduced to two products, basically beer and stout, that actually has any kind of customs duties in when imported into Singapore. And you can imagine when Singapore goes onto the negotiating table, we don't have much to offer. We're saying, okay, we can offer duty-free access for everything, and the other country is saying, ayo, you already duty-free already. What's what's there to offer? For imports into Singapore, there's really no need to use FTAs. So don't bother, because it's already duty-free. That's true. There are no customs duties on most of the products imported into Singapore. So I think this is really for companies looking to export out of Singapore, or broader than that, you're looking at, say, your manufacturing in Malaysia, and you're trying to service China, for example. So so FTAs are out there all over the world. So it's something for you to explore. So for imports, yes, really, there's no need to use FTAs.
Okay, and Richard, sorry, do you have any final say?
Yeah, I think agree with Melissa. That's the situation for Singapore. We are really a lot of things not duty anymore. Yeah, but just to add on, I think really for the simplifying the search, right? I really urge all to try out. But if let's say you are experiencing like reading a lot of materials that you're still not hitting anywhere, I strongly encourage you to try out CIA, because at least it helps you to narrow from the beginning, and then if you need to read further and need to explore further, of course, the MRA grant to engage the consultant or get the proper advisory, I think that will be a better option. So yeah, I think I encourage you to try it out, get the initial information so that you know how to proceed for the next step. I encourage you to try out and step out for the very first step.
Okay, Kesha, thank you so much. Thank you so much for a big thank you to Melissa and Richard for their time and valuable sharing today. We hope that all the participants have benefited a lot from the webinar. I do understand that there may be some very technical questions by the participants, but we will be providing, as you can see on the screen right now, all the contact details for the speakers itself. So do drop them an email, give them a call to tell them about your questions that you have that you want them to help you to answer. Now, we have come to the end of the session, and we look forward to seeing you again in our future event. So everyone, do stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Melissa. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.